When Buzz Aldrin stepped out of the lunar module and onto the moon, his first words were, "Beautiful view." It's not hard to see why. The Earth looks so brilliantly small from up there, but seeing massive events on the planet's surface from so far up takes them to a whole other level. Astronauts in the International Space Station, some 250 miles above our heads, regularly watch hurricanes crashing into coastlines, volcanoes exploding through the clouds, and wildfires racing across the country. You may think these events are impressive at ground level, but there's nothing like looking down at them from up high. Now let's go for a spin around the planet as we check out some of the most amazing events ever seen from space. Happy Moon Day. Is there a giant cigarette burn over the planet? Or a massive scorch mark left behind by a departing alien ship? No, it's actually the shadow of a solar eclipse. A solar eclipse occurs when the moon passes between the sun and the Earth, blocking the sun's light and casting the moon's shadow over the Earth. Like here, where in 2021, the shadow landed over Antarctica and lasted for just under 2 minutes. It was an extraordinary cosmic display for a handful of research scientists and 20 million penguins. Now, polar eclipses are rare because the sun's light only reaches the poles for part of the year. They're so rare that the next polar eclipse won't occur until 2039. Eclipses are an amazing event, but you must never look directly at one. Otherwise, you could go blind. The sun's light is only fully eclipsed by the moon for a few seconds. After that, even the slightest sliver of sun can burn your retinas. This results in solar retinopathy, where there's a constant blind spot in your vision. Well, I sure hope all those penguins had their shades on. Night and day. In my opinion, there's nothing as beautiful as a sunset. And if you get up early enough, you can even marvel at a sunrise. Astronauts, on the other hand, never sleep through a sunrise. In fact, they see one every 90 minutes. How is that possible? Well, the International Space Station orbits the Earth at a speed of over 16,700 miles per hour, completing a full revolution of the planet in just under an hour and a half. As a result, astronauts travel through 16 sunrises and sunsets a day. While the rest of us have our morning rituals and cozy nighttime routines, astronauts have whiplash just keeping track of what day it is. Day, night, day, night, day, night, day, night. Man, just saying it is exhausting. Still, I have to admit that is an absolutely stunning sight to behold. You know what else is incredible to behold? The millions of people who've hit that subscribe button. You guys are out of this world. If you haven't already, be sure to hit it up and drop this video a like if you're feeling extra generous. Alright, where are we pointing our telescopes at next? Silent disco. There may be no sound in space, but there are jazzy lights. The Aurora Borealis, or the Northern Lights as you may know them, are a breathtaking sight to see on Earth, but they're even cooler to see from space. For a start, they appear much bigger than the few wavy ribbons you glimpse on Earth. Huge stretches of these fluorescent lights curve and wave across hundreds of miles over the surface of the Earth. Wow, looks like some sort of galactic rave. Aliens could host a cosmic Coachella up there. Well, as fun as that sounds, the aurora isn't some giant space party, but part of our Earth's defense against hazardous solar winds. You see, the sun is an ongoing explosion, constantly emitting streams of charged particles. Occasionally, it'll emit a huge burst of energy known as a solar storm. The energized, lethally radioactive particles making up these storms slam into the Earth's upper atmosphere at speeds of up to 45 million miles per hour. But we're shielded from these harmful particles because the Earth's magnetic field deflects them to the north and south poles. This deflection causes a release of energy that lights up the gases in our atmosphere. Nitrogen, for example, causes a red aurora, while oxygen dazzles a brilliant green. Astronauts have a great seat to watch this stellar sight, but they can't get too close as the aurora is a radioactive battlefield. NASA has lifetime radiation protocols in place, limiting the amount of time astronauts can even be near the aurora display. So maybe the aurora borealis is one thing that's better to see on Earth, behind the safety of our planet's magnetic field. Comet me, bro. Let's rewind to 2013, when something quite literally rocked the Russian city of Chelyabinsk to its core. A meteor. The 66-foot diameter space rock streaked across the sky, traveling at a scary 42,690 miles per hour. At this speed, as it collided with particles in our atmosphere and encountered air resistance, it began to burn up, streaking across the sky so brightly it was very briefly brighter than the sun. Under this immense pressure, the meteor exploded some 18.5 miles above Chelyabinsk, generating a shockwave stronger than a nuclear explosion, with the blast detected as far away as Antarctica. The massive shockwave shattered windows throughout the city, resulting in more than 1,200 injuries. The smoke trail left behind stretched across most of the sky, and to many, the whole ordeal felt like an apocalyptic event. But from space, the massive meteor barely looked like a blip on the radar. See that super small streak? Yeah, and that's what showed up on the satellites. It was so small from up there that astronauts aboard the ISS weren't able to spot it, and more amazingly, most meteors look like this from space. How come? Well, around 15,000 tons of space debris enters the Earth's atmosphere every year. Now, most of it is burned up by the immense fiery heat generated by air resistance, reducing even the largest meteors down to small rocks. Although even small rocks traveling at thousands of miles per hour can do a lot of damage. As a result of the events in Chelyabinsk, NASA has established a Planetary Defense Coordination Office to monitor any asteroids flying past our patch of space. These satellites can capture stunning images of meteor showers occurring in the upper reaches of our Earth's atmosphere. More importantly, it can also serve as a vital early warning system in case something bigger is heading our way. After all, we don't want to go the same way as the dinosaurs. Space paint. Up in space, astronauts don't just limit themselves to what they can see with their eyes. I know that sounds really weird, but keep in mind they have some seriously fancy tech up there. NASA can capture images across the electromagnetic spectrum and compile the results into wacky pictures like this. Can you guess what this is? Some sort of super-sized oil spill, perhaps? Nope. It's the Anti-Atlas mountain range in Morocco. In this picture, visible and infrared light waves have been combined to showcase the different layers of rock involved in the complex folding of the mountain range, which formed when the African and Eurasian tectonic plates crashed into each other 80 million years ago. It looks like an abstract painting, doesn't it? And for even fancier brushstrokes, check out this satellite image of the Bahamas sandbank. This looks like it had to have been painted by hand, right? But in fact, it was the crafty work of Mother Nature. The wave-shaped ripples seen here are white coral sand dunes on the seafloor, and were shaped by deep ocean currents. The range of blues and greens are a result of seagrass growing at different depths in different quantities. The overhead Land 7 satellite was even able to capture the shallow depths of the Bahama Bank in detail, where it is only as deep as 7 feet in some places. But sometimes all you need to take a great picture is a simple camera zoom. Check out this frozen image captured of the frozen Dnieper River flowing through Russia to the Black Sea. The river is 1,400 miles long and freezes over between December and March. Every winter, its frozen, meandering bends create an abstract image that could easily have been painted by Picasso himself. In the summer, the ice melts and the river reverts back to its liquid state. But from space, it's almost unrecognizable. Who knew Mother Nature had her very own cosmic disguise kit? Blown away. The Atlantic Ocean conjures up 10 hurricanes on average every year, 3 of which are superstorms that fall into the categories 3, 4, or 5 on the hurricane wind scale. Orbiting around the planet, astronauts can observe these storms forming and watch as they migrate across the ocean and go crashing into coastlines. Just like Hurricane Ida that landed in Louisiana in 2021 and went hurtling across the southern U.S. Seen from space, this storm makes for a captivating picture, but down below, it was a torrent of destruction. This Category 4 storm having ripped the state apart with 150-mile-per-hour winds. And Louisiana can't catch a break. Just the year before, the state was lambasted by Hurricane Laura, another Category 4 storm. Seen from the NOAA 20 satellite, Hurricane Laura appeared rather peaceful, like a giant swirl of cotton candy some 60 miles across. But don't be fooled by its calm facade, as this hurricane wrecked Louisiana and Texas with turbulent 150-mile-per-hour winds. Although the full force of the tropical storm's winds exceeded 205 miles per hour at the center. Wait, how does that work? Hurricanes are formed when warm ocean air rises and cools, water condensing into clouds and releasing heat that powers up the storms. In order to grow, a hurricane must suck in more air. Air is drawn in a clockwise direction and sucked towards the center. The air accelerates and releases heat, the thermal energy directed to the eye of the storm, the sole center of calm, where the violent hurricane winds disappear. Cruising above, an astronaut on the ISS was able to capture this picture of Hurricane Dorian's eye, an impossible feat to do on Earth as the eye's diameter stretches 12 miles across. Hurricane Dorian was a Category 5 hurricane that blasted the Bahamas in 2019 with insane winds of 220 miles per hour. It resulted in $3.4 billion in damages, but from 250 miles above, the ISS was able to observe it completely unaffected. Though when it comes to destructive damage, Hurricane Dorian was easily trumped by the beastly Hurricane Florence. This hurricane crashed into North Carolina in 2018 and forced 1.7 million people to evacuate their homes. It soaked North Carolina with 8 trillion gallons of rain, with 120-mile-per-hour winds resulting in $17 to $22 billion worth of property damage. Astronauts were able to capture the 30-mile-wide eye of the storm. And even from space, you can see the monstrous nature of the winds, with this mammoth storm nearly encasing the curvature of the Earth. I bet the astronauts on the ISS were feeling grateful they weren't on the ground that day. Lava lamp. Active volcanoes are ticking time bombs, and when they blow, they can even rattle satellites. No, seriously, the recent 2022 Hunga Tonga Hunga volcanic eruption sent out shockwaves that generated 450 miles per hour wind speeds in the ionosphere. This is the last layer of the Earth's atmosphere, right at the edge of space. The underwater volcano also sent out a plume of smoke so large it reached the mesosphere, the third layer of the atmosphere 25 miles above the Earth. The eruption shook the world, with the blast being equivalent to 18 megatons of TNT. That's more powerful than the atomic bombs used in World War II. The eruption was captured in crystal clear detail by the overhead NOAA GOES West satellite. I bet the astronauts had to tighten a few screws afterwards in case they'd been shaken loose. In recent years, satellites have also been able to capture the umbrella effect of a volcanic explosion, the top of which is almost impossible to observe from ground level. But this phenomenon was neatly captured by satellites following the Raikoke eruption in 2019. The umbrella effect is where billowing smoke of a volcanic plume is capped off by the air pressure in the atmosphere, creating a flattening effect as the smoke stops rising and instead spreads out to the sides. This volcanic plume rose 10 miles into the atmosphere before it formed an umbrella top, with the eruption having gone on for 48 hours with 9 explosions recorded. The continuous orbit of the ISS means it's captured a few volcanoes in action over the years, such as this 2009 eruption over the Sarchev volcano in Russia's Kuril Islands. The ISS captured not only the volcanic plume, but also the volcano's pyroclastic flow. For those who aren't hot on the old volcanic lingo, pyroclastic flows are avalanches of hot gas and volcanic matter that rush down the side of an erupting volcano. They incinerate everything in their path with temperatures inside capable of reaching a spicy 1,300 degrees Fahrenheit. It's hard to really capture the scale of this from the ground, but orbiting up in space, the ISS was able to snap 29 pictures of this monster in action over the course of a minute. Like seeing a 36-mile-high plume burst through the clouds from space wasn't enough, NASA's satellites can also use infrared imaging to track lava flows underneath the eruption's thick smoke cover. This way, they can almost always track the hottest part of the action, though this is something that may be better to see on Earth, as geologists can get as up close and personal with 2,200 degree Fahrenheit lava as they like. But imagine if they stepped on the wrong part. Yikes, that's a mistake you'd only make once. Icetronauts. Capturing images of Earth from space isn't all about the great screensaver potential. Rather, it's important to document and study our changing planet, especially in the case of the current climate crisis and Earth's melting ice caps. Take Greenland's Petermann Glacier that NASA has been monitoring with piqued interest since 2010. You see those small blue dots? Those are actually mile-wide meltwater lakes. Yeah, this tidewater glacier is 43 miles long and 9.3 miles wide, located in the northwest of Greenland. But it's starting to break apart. In August 2010, a giant 100-square-mile iceberg broke off the glacier and reduced its volume by around 25%. The adrift ice chunk was named Petermann Ice Island, but it didn't stop there. In 2012, another ice chunk broke off, a 50-square-mile iceberg, collapsing off the northern tip of the glacier. This wasn't exactly a surprise, though, as NASA satellites spotted a large crack forming along the ice years prior. And sadly, this ice sheet just keeps getting smaller and smaller. Greenland is undoubtedly the world's most ironic country, as it's actually 80% ice. But with the world's average surface temperature increasing around 2 degrees Fahrenheit every year for the past decade, that ice is slowly melting. And it's not just the glaciers that are starting to vanish, but the ancient Baffin Bay. Located between Baffin Island and the west coast of Greenland, this place has been inhabited for 2,500 years and was first settled by the early ancestors of the Inuit people. The bay is not navigable for most of the year as it is completely frozen over, or at least that used to be the case. Check out this composite picture captured by NASA satellites in 2000. Those small blue dots are meltwater lakes, but other than that, this giant ice sheet is largely intact. However, take a look at it now. Oh my god, looks like someone smashed up the ice with Thor's hammer. But no hammers were involved here. Just the brutal blow of climate change. Yikes. Now, satellites are perfect for capturing snapshots of our planet throughout the year. Take a look at what the Landsat 8 satellite managed to capture from orbit as it crossed over the Delta Oasis in southeastern Kazakhstan, where it was shaking off the last clutches of winter. A delta is where a fast-flowing river slows and deposits its sediment load. The dramatic swirls highlighted here are the sediment deposits being stirred up by the ice melting and breaking apart in Lake Balkhash. Currently, Lake Balkhash is one of the largest lakes in Asia and the 15th largest in the world, but it's also starting to shrink. Recent construction of hydroelectric dams further up the Ili River having diverted water away from the lake. Though it's a shame to say it, it's important that NASA preserves images of these landscapes before they disappear completely. Hot stuff. As we've established, the world is heating up, and because of that, wildfires are sadly becoming more and more common, set to increase by at least 50% by 2100. And while that sounds devastating at ground level, from space, it looks even worse. Take a look at the 2019-2020 Australian bushfire season, which was horrifically record-breaking. Between 60 million to 84 million acres of land were ravaged by the fires, resulting in the destruction of 3,500 homes and $73.26 billion worth of damage. It was so extensive that NASA captured the thick smoke smothering the land, with swaths of it traveling 6,800 miles across the Pacific Ocean and even impacting Chile and Argentina. The smoke was slowly creeping across the whole planet. In contrast, NASA satellites also captured the 2020 Western United States fire season. Composite images that compile visible photography with infrared mapping highlight the contrast between the size of the fires and the huge stretches of smoke. The fires coalesced into megafires that ran rampant, burning through more than 10.2 million acres of land and costing more than $3 billion in firefighting efforts. However, far deadlier was the 2018 California Camp Fire. While 52,000 people had to evacuate, overhead, NASA satellites were able to capture in clear detail the terrifying destruction of this wildfire. Ignited by a faulty power line, the Camp Fire rapidly spread downhill and annihilated 4 towns in its wake. The Camp Fire quickly burned through 240 square miles of land in total, causing $16.7 billion worth of property damage. Even orbiting 430 miles above the Earth, the Landsat 8 satellite didn't have to zoom in far to capture the colossal smoke bands of this humongous blaze. However, not all wildfires are a sign of the apocalypse. The Kansas springtime burning of the prairie grasses is a traditional pastime, but even they have been spotted by NASA satellites. Dozens of deliberate fires are lit by farmers in the prairie land to help control invasive species of wild grasses. This annual burning only occurs a few days each year, and weather conditions must be perfect to prevent these fires from turning into wild blazes. The wind speeds can only be between 5 to 15 miles per hour, the relative humidity of the air between 40 to 70%. Otherwise, if the air is too dry or the wind too strong, then these fires could get out of hand and consume the entire prairie land. This is a literal case of playing with fire. Dust Bowl. The Sahara Desert is one of the driest and hottest places on Earth, with temperatures soaring up to 117 degrees Fahrenheit. Meanwhile, on the other side of the planet, the Amazon rainforest holds the world's richest ecosystem, with over 40,000 plant species and 4,730 species of bird, fish, and mammals. These two landscapes couldn't be more different if they tried. Or at least that's what you would think. You see, up in space, NASA has a different view, and they've spotted an unbelievable link between these two world landmarks. Strong winds sweep across the Sahara Desert and stir up the sandy surface, creating dust storms that can stretch hundreds of miles across and more than 10 miles high. The sand is then carried on a 1,600-mile journey across the Atlantic Ocean, where upon reaching its final destination, 27.7 million tons of sand are deposited across the surface of the Amazon basin. Though some find sand coarse, rough, and irritating, it's gold dust to plants, especially the sand picked up from the Beaudelet Depression in Chad, an ancient lake bed where rock salts are packed full of phosphorus, a vital nutrient plants need to grow. Despite the Amazon possessing plenty of nutrient-rich resources, such as decomposing leaf matter, the heavy rainfall means much of the soil's minerals are washed away. The sand delivered from the Sahara counteracts the loss of phosphorus from intense rainfall and feeds the Amazon's 390 billion trees. So, the Sahara's gritty grains are a vital lifeline for the Amazon jungle, something we never would have discovered if not for NASA satellites orbiting the Earth and giving us a bird's-eye view of the planet. Nice one, NASA. Base Qatar. So, NASA has been launching satellites into space since 1958. And while they've tracked some dramatic natural changes over the years, they've also recorded cities springing up in the unlikeliest of places. Perhaps one of the most surprising developments has been Doha, the capital city of Qatar, as it transformed from an ancient Arabic city into a skyscraper metropolis. Qatar's rapid development is the result of the riches brought by that all-important black gold, with the country sat on a crude oil hotspot. Qatar's oil was discovered in 1939, though successful extraction didn't take place till 1949. Over the decades, Qatar has continued mining its oil resources, boosting the economy and resulting in the rapid expansion of Doha. Over 38 years, from 1984 to 2022, constant development has seen the landscape change drastically, with construction projects sprawling out over the sands and even molding the coastline. In particular, real estate is an industry that has been heavily invested in, though livable space is rather limited in the arid desert. To combat this, developers began construction of an artificial island. The Pearl Qatar Island was designed to create 19.9 new miles of coastline, and the houses there are already selling like hotcakes. As of 2018, there are over 27,000 residents, and the city expected to expand even further, as Qatar still holds 25 billion barrels worth of oil reserves, so developers won't be running out of cash anytime soon, and the ISS will capture these ongoing changes to the city with every orbit. Nightlight. Being up in space, the ISS has an unbelievable view of the stars in the sky, but the astronauts on board also have a starry map to admire down below, thanks to the light pollution from all the artificial lighting installed across the most populous places in the world. In the US, you can tell that New York isn't the only city that never sleeps, with cities glittering all across the East Coast, from Chicago to Atlanta, and even down south to the lit-up Houston. On the West Coast, Los Angeles generates more light than all the Midwest states combined. The reason for this is that many streetlights are designed to shine light in every direction, including up at the sky. By some estimates, 40% of a city's electric bill goes towards street lighting, and about half of that is simply wasted. However, this does create a sky glow effect, where down on Earth our view of the stars is obstructed. Up in space, astronauts can locate the capital cities of every state. In fact, astronauts can tell which city is which by some of their colors. Take a look at Tokyo at night. The distinctive green shade here is a result of mercury vapor lamps that produce white light with a bluish-green tinge. Meanwhile, more modern cities use sodium vapor lamps that shine with a bold orange color, as seen here over Northern Europe. This means astronauts don't always need to check their GPS coordinates, as they can tell where they're orbiting above by the distribution of lighting, as demonstrated here by the blackout over North Korea, next to the bright and shining city of Seoul in South Korea. And astronauts can spot Cairo a mile away, as the illuminated Egyptian capital is clustered along the Nile River. But one of the most monumental events observed by NASA's study of the Earth at night is the rapid development of China. At night, this country looks like a copy of the Milky Way. Beijing, seen here, glows in a neat grid pattern with concentric rings of roadways encircling the city as it has expanded thanks to its bustling population of 21.3 million people. And as China continues to industrialize its cities, the spread of these lights will only continue. Man, those astronauts will have trouble sleeping if the world gets any brighter. Which of these things would you most like to witness from space? Let me know down in the comments below, and thanks for watching.